how to calculate chess moves, how to actually perform the art of analyzing during a game, finding candidate moves, and going through variations and making conclusions and so on. We're gonna take you on a journey today where we're gonna try this in practical chess without the use of engines. So I'm not gonna show you a lot of flashy variations. I'm just gonna show you how I do it, and I have not checked this with the computer, so there will be tons of mistakes that the computer can find afterwards, but that's not what we're interested in. It's more the thought process and the sort of elimination and so on, fun by finding the right moves. We're going to use a great game by Jonas Bjerre versus Benjamin Gledura, played in St. Louis a few days back, and it's very complicated, it's very tactical, and there's a lot of things to calculate. By the way, if you like the videos on GM Talks, you can do something for me. You can tell your friends about me. You can tell your chess buddies. Go into GM Talks and subscribe and so on, so we can get some more viewers. That would be nice. Thank you. That's what you can do. Now what I can do for you is to tell you about this game. And here we go. Jonas is white. He starts with knight here. Nothing to calculate yet. This is a great move. c5. Black is willing to play a Sicilian after e4. Jonas was not here to play the Sicilian. He played c4. So we have a symmetrical English. And here with both knights out, and e3, e6, d4, d5. And now we have a symmetrical terrace variation. And the main move for white here is a3. And it's sort of, we have a waiting game here. White does not want to take, and black does not want to take. If black takes here, we will have an Queen's Gambit accepted with the knights on c3 and c6. Both are sort of a little bit dodgy in modern theory, but okay, for most people it wouldn't matter too much, right? Anyway, a3 is a waiting move. White is getting ready. He hopes black would move the bishop, and then he would take on c5. Okay, I'm just going to show you here something like this, and take on c5 and play b4. Also, this move is very useful. This square is important, and so on. Black did take and say, okay, you didn't move your bishop, but you did move a pawn, and now I'm gonna just get my pieces out. This is one of the lines. Black. Another variation black can play is to go a6. Makes a lot of sense. You can also take on d4, but sometimes some like this. White will not take on d5. He'll probably play c5 and play this kind of structure, and it's not to everybody's liking. This majority here can be pretty scary, and in general, I don't like these positions so much for black. He took here. a6, castle, b5, also makes sense. Nothing to calculate yet either. Something like this, you can always look at it, but at this situation, it's clear that after this, black can break the pin here. Oops, sorry. Come back. So this pin is now broken, and you don't have enough for the material. So nothing to do. You have to go. You can go this way, or you can go, which makes more sense, to go the other way. You did get this little nice square for the bishop, and of course it's hoping it will do something on this diagonal. Bishop b7, also natural move for white, for black. Just getting the pieces out to this square. This is often a very good diagonal in these kind of structures. You know it from the Queen's Gambit accepted and the Miran variation. Queen e2, also a very normal square for white in the Queen's Gambit accepted. We can see that here it seems like black can win a pawn, but maybe white could take back and see if he will get enough compensation. But he can also just play this, and then black might regret having taken here so early and having opened the position without being ready to castle. So bishop e7 makes a lot of sense. Rook is coming here anyway, and white is basically threatened to win a pawn here. oops, sorry, with this move, and then he's ready to cover the pawn afterwards. So black moves out of the way. You could look at something like d5 here. It does not look like here you can take with the bishop or the knight, but something like this does not look very scary for black. He just castle. You could say that you have a majority on the king side, but there's nothing immediate, and black would probably put a bishop here and exercise some pressure and some rooks here and so on. I don't think white is in the position to start a kingside attack for real here. Black is simply too active and well developed. So that sort of is something you don't calculate. It's something you feel, sense, and the reason why you can do that is because you've seen these kind of situations many times. So you sort of develop an intuition. Intuition is you could say that is experience. So you use your experience as a tool for guiding you through the maze of variations. So instead, white decided to take here. Black did use a tempo to get his bishop out, and white does the same here. And we start to look, is there anything, because we have this queen here, we have this knight here, so is there something white can do here? No, it's not. It doesn't seem like it works. So black will put the bishop somewhere. Where could he put it? He could put it here, but I think he's probably a little bit afraid that he's putting too many pieces away from the king. White is definitely preparing to launch an attack on the king. So it does make some sense to put it here, and also keeping an eye on this one. So one day you might play this, and you also discourage this move. So makes sense. Bishop b2. Now the knight probably had to be due to this threat, and castle. And rook here, also very natural move. Rook to the open file. There is an X-ray effect on the queen. So far they're playing very sensible moves. We can see that there are some weaknesses on the queen side that could turn out to be outpost. So maneuvering pieces to those could be interesting. We can also see that white has some serious bishops here pointing towards the black king. So but black seems to be in a harmonious way and well developed, and he's ready to exchange a lot of pieces here. Okay. And here white does something that maybe looks a bit odd, but makes a lot of sense. He goes here because it seems no action will also take place on this diagonal. Of course, if black was to go something like this, then it might return and be very strong towards the f7 square. Remember that just because he left the square, the diagonal, doesn't mean he can't go back. But it seems like maybe there are more to attack here and here than on the other diagonal. Also, white has to do something, and black takes here with starting to exchange, and of course the next idea is also to exchange something. Here he plays a maybe slightly weird move, but I think it makes sense in general, and this is a general rule again. The C file is better than the D file in these kind of situations because it's further away from the king, and usually there are more entry points on the C file than on the D file. We can see it here also that there are all these, and on D file there are slightly less, and so on. And sometimes it's more pronounced than here. So black plays this move. It also makes sense. Rook to an open file covers the queen, probably getting ready for something like this. And white could say, okay, I didn't get much in the opening. Let's play something solid. Okay, I don't have a home for my queen. I could play something like h3, create some air for the king, which is always nice. And then just exchange a lot of pieces and say it's probably going to be a draw, but I'm not going to be worse, and so on. Instead, he decided to launch an attack, and that's of course much more interesting. So here we go, knight here, and we see we have something here. The knight is having interesting points. It also has the option of going to e4, and in general, if it was, for instance, white to move here, he could also maybe put some knight here, opening for this rook and opening for the bishop, and trying to get all the pieces to point towards black's king side. Black, of course, has to be careful. Queen d8 makes a lot of sense. If we could exchange queens, there will be no attack at all, and it's dead equal. So here white decides to play a wild move, wild and interesting move. So let's see it and start calculating. Queen f3. So leaving the d file, getting the queen, the big lady, closer to black's position. We also see that this at the moment this one is maybe a serious annoyance to black, but there are some ideas here for black, and let's start to calculate. We can see that he cannot move the knight here, for instance, because then white will just take, right? There's nothing. Okay. He could play something like this move, which would seem to be a natural move, saying, okay, what kind of attack do you have? I kind of think that would be my main move to consider first. So that would be a clear candidate. We're seeing, okay, white will probably have to play something like this. And here probably you will have to take, and queen takes, and there's a threat in checkmate in 2 here, so you have to go here, which looks incredibly scary with all this, but it seems to be okay, right? I don't see how white is going to get the pieces out here easily. It's not totally clear, and black does have this threat, which is also annoying, brings a lot of discomfort to white's position. So h6, I would probably if we're calculating, we see that does this work? No, we can sense that it does not work. What about something like this move? No, it doesn't look like it's really working. Black can just play king f8. It doesn't seem like there's anything there. Something like this does not look very good. I think here with this being very solid and so on, Black can probably play something like queen d2. And it does look like it's a bit scary. You're hitting the bishop here. You're bringing a lot of discomfort to the knight. But you could also consider something like this, hitting the bishop and getting into this square later on, which also does not look great for white. So h6, 94, something like this. And here you really have to calculate and say, okay, what's going on in this situation? And maybe rook d1. I would be a little bit scared here, but I'm not sure there's anything seriously going on. So probably black is fine. And if he gets the bishop to g7, there would be no problem at all, and so on. Even though it does look a little bit spooky. So h6 is definitely a move, I think. You can always check with the computer. But what about, okay, there are some tactical things. At the moment, white might be threatening this. He's probably threatening this, because if black takes back, then there's this, and we see that this one is also open, and this one is here, and so on, and that looks spooky. That looks pretty good. So white does have a threat with queen f3. Okay, so what else can we see? We can see that, but what about tactical solutions? Are there any tactical solutions for white? I was thinking about this move. That looks completely crazy, but the idea is that this here is here. So what happens here? Okay, you cannot take it due to bishop takes, of course. So white loses the queen. That's usually never good. Okay, what about taking the bishop here? And here my idea was to play this move, check, and the king, and if he takes here, then he's actually made it like this, right? And these kind of lines, they are, I don't know why, but for me they're rather easy to calculate, because it's all check, 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 and there's the bank rank. But okay, so here knight takes doesn't work, so he has to move the king. It looks natural to go here, even though it's not so nice. And here you can maybe take here, and mm, I don't know. Interesting move. What can you do here? You can say that if you take here, then you're probably going to lose a piece, because there's also a pin the other way. So this, if you see this looks a bit spooky. And maybe we can just do something like maybe this move. I don't know. But then you have to look at this move. Very confusing. Very confusing. And here, so this move. And with the idea, if he takes here, I would take here and win something. You cannot take back because there's a check here. And we notice that the bishop can go here where it covers the queen. So this seems like good for black. Okay, so let's get it. So is knight d4 a good move? So taking on b7 looks like it's bad. So we have to move the queen. Probably it has to stay on, I think it has to stay on this diagonal, because otherwise black will do this check again like before, and we have this same mate here and so on. So probably this move, right? Okay, but now it also looks a little bit strange, and this could be actually a repetition of moves, where black says, "Okay, you can go queen f3 again. Yeah, I will go knight d4." That would be cool. So that was sort of a cool variation. Knight c6. So it seems like knight d4 is good. Someone will have to check it with the computer. What about something like this? Just let's check it. And we have this move. And that doesn't seem to work, right? Okay, we move the king. And maybe take with the knight. Now you can take here. And maybe this move. Okay, so knight d4 looks better than h6. There's also another option here for black. That's because you really, really want to put your bishop on this diagonal. I just remember this idea. Does this work? So this is, I think it was Ulf Anderson who did this first. And the idea is simply that if you go here, the king will be very safe on e7. So the threat is not that big, and you really want your bishop here where it covers the d7 pawn. This looks good. So bishop f6, h6, take, and bishop f6 is all. So knight d4, and it sort of goes to show why I was a little bit skeptic about this move. In the game, he did this move, which looks very, very critical, because we're not afraid of anything, and black is threatening this one, and it looks very, and you can't move it because then the rook is hanging, and so on, and it looks that looks spooky. That looks a bit scary. But there are some problems, and one of them is what came in the game. Well, that's the only problem, because white did have a threat with queen f3, right? Because the queen is here, so he is ready to attack. And in the game, he took on here, and of course this is kind of difficult to calculate. So what is going on here? In the game, black took, but you also have to calculate what happens if black does not take. What if black plays something like this move? What happens then? This pawn down here is not that important. We just saw that the king could sometimes walk out. So what's going on here? Black is threatening this move and maybe this move as well, something like that. So it is a bit spooky here, right? Mm-hmm. Interesting. But okay, maybe white can go something like this. Does that make sense? Yes, because it covers the bishop by simply putting a move in between, and you did win a pawn here. Black cannot move the knight, of course. Then it's mate in one, um, and maybe white is threatening this move. Hmm. And this pin here is still annoying. It's probably very unclear, but I think I would prefer to be white here. So can we find an idea for black? The thing is, the problem with something like this here, you can't take it back. Mm-hmm. But what about check? Then maybe 98. Oh, then check here. Ah, that looks good. So if we give a check here, he'll have to put something. He cannot exchange queens, then he loses the rook. A lot of pieces are hanging, so this is probably forced. Maybe just this move. That looks smart. By the way, he had to go with bishop here because if he does this, then there's this check. And this is part of calculation. Always try to calculate checks and things that hit something and counterattacks and so on. That's the difficult part. It's also when to stop, because you could stop here and say, okay, I want a pawn and I have some attack. Okay, the queen is a little bit annoying here, but by the way, if I have one move, I will play this move and I will be a pawn up. So I'll play queen h3 and I'll be fine, or something like I'll play knight b1 and be ready to take the queen or something. So you could say that, but it's not completely clear. What about this move? It also looks a little bit spooky. Then something like this maybe. There's no immediate threat, right? And except you're threatening the queen. And something like this. And this is still okay. But now black, there's no mate here. So black can take here. And if white takes back, this looks a bit scary. Wait, what about this move? We see that it is quite annoying that this guy is not. Maybe queen h7 here. Threatening mate. This move. That's possible. What about this move? Bishop here. But then we take on c8. See, calculation is very difficult. Here, white has a threat here, mate in one. black goes something like this, and we go something like this. But then what about this move? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, black can only take one piece. So if we go to df1 with the rook, then we're not mated. And then we can get this one. Whoa, complicated stuff, huh? Not easy at all. I'm not sure. I think black is probably fine here. So king f8 is definitely interesting. Knight a5. What about just going back then? Because it didn't seem like it worked. This looks like it's better. It is a bit clumsy for white, but there's nothing immediately, and you are a pawn up. And if after something like this, I think maybe this move is best, just to cover the bishop. And because black is coming with this move, and then you can probably just go like this, and then exchange the knight and have a pawn more. But black does have the bishop pair, and this could be, so it's, I would say, unclear, these kind of things, because a5 is maybe coming, and black is very active. So very interesting. What about this move then? We see that f7 is also hanging now. And it would be nice to turn on the engines here, right? Because this kind of thing is very difficult. The problem with the engines is you don't have them when you're playing. That's pretty clear, right? So you don't have the engines when you're playing chess. Here, could go here, but oh, that's mate here. Look, notice something like this is also something you really have to see. So this does not work, but the same idea as before. Bishop here seems to work, and we do have a check here. So white's attack is a little bit more cool. It's also when after, for instance, something like this, we have something like this, then this mates, right? So you could never, so you can never take with that again. And here, instead, something like this again, and knight takes. And please notice this is of course the point is the rook is covered, so there is no back rank mate, and white wins. So, and take here. And if you, and here white is winning because he's getting extra tempo here, and he will have time after f5, for instance. He play queen d3, so white is winning. Okay, so king h8 it looks much worse. King f8 is probably very unclear. He took the knight, so we didn't even calculate that when we took on h7. We should have, but of course Jonas did. And of course the idea is to take here and somehow get this bishop into the game here. So take here. What black's move is forced. Is there any way to do something here? Well, first of all, if you do something like this, then one of the problem is this move, and the queen simply covers here and threatens mate here. Another problem could be, I don't know if it is a problem, it could be something like this, because that does not work, because then the queen is hanging. But just bishop takes queen takes bishop is good enough. So there's not time for that. The bishop is threatened, and you have to get this knight away to cover, and something like this. Then maybe here, that's also oops. Knight here. Then there's again the mate here. We see that. So always check, scan for checks, scan for. This is really complicated. It's not recommended without computer, but it's sort of also to show the process when you're analyzing during the game what's actually going on here. So okay, so white must have planned this move. That covers that is a bit scary for black here. Um, and of course, if black was to move the rook, then white definitely have some attack with the bishop and knights coming and so on. So black's idea was probably maybe this move. We'll have to look. Maybe this move is cool. Well, then there's here. The idea is checkmate here. And after this, take, threatening mate, something like this. This is pretty cool. Let's cover this. It does threaten here, oops, and here, because there's this problem. That's pretty awesome as well. And yeah, complicated stuff, huh? It seems to win. Maybe this move. You can just here. Okay. Never mind. Winning everything. Okay. So rook g8 knight f4 looks a little bit. What about this? If this move, then there's mate, right? With this move. So this looks good. Okay, so that's probably what Jonas saw, that this knight here. But you can move the rook again, maybe. But then there's a check. I don't know. Difficult. Here he played this move, covering this one, but okay, it does allow white to get the bishop back. And now we have the same thing on these situations as we did on the other side. Okay, so he has to cover the rook and the knight. The thing is, if he just moves the rook somewhere, something like this, white will take here, and after something like this, he can probably just play something like this, right? Or here. Because here, because queen covers the rook here. And the knight also covers this one, so, and attacks. And oops, the rook is also hanging here, so that was pretty bad analysis. Okay, 97. That makes sense. So black is covering here, and what's going on here? It seems like white had got some problems, because these are big problems. There's a lot of things here. How to cover this? If you move the rook, you just take the bishop. So he's gonna take the bishop. Not easy. And the rook does not have a good square. Well, it does have one square. That's also where he went, so that's probably the best move. The thing is, you would love to have it here or on something active, but it does not seem to work. And the big problem is that the rook will be attacked afterwards, and threatening mate on the back rank here. So Jonas played this move. Okay, so why does he not lose a piece here? Why black just takes this one? But there's still some problems, because this rook is covered by this knight. So if this knight was not here, then this would. So white has some ideas with knight d5. We're getting rid of the rook, and we also see that this king is not so safe because this knight is in the way. So if it gets a check, it has some problems. So rook f1 is really smart because after black, I don't think if black does not take, then white can just well, he can take here. That is possible. But okay, you take back, queen takes back, queen takes here, and we count the pawn, and white is 3 pawns up and has an ongoing attack. So, okay, that does not work. So let's see if there's anything else. So taking here is not a good option if you lose any pieces here. Taking the rook, you could do that maybe, I don't know. But there's also the problem with the check down here. Maybe, but what about this? Okay, but here white is having 3 pawns and rook versus 2 minor pieces, and he does have an attack. So here, after for instance, just this move, white is clearly better. He's way up on material. Okay, so taking on c3 doesn't work, and if he does not do that, then how is he going to improve his position? So he takes here. And white exercises his idea, knight here, double attacking this one, but it's also freeing the rook from, and it can go here. But we see that the rook is well placed here. If it was anywhere else, then we will be losing now. So here black can actually take this one. But now we see that, what about the checks? And there is also a knight here that might be hanging at some point. But then there is also a check down here. So let's say we try to calculate. We say, okay, take here, take here. Then black has, and in general, you would normally give the check on a white square to sort of have more checks. So you give, and black will have to go here, and then you can choose to give checks different places. But if you, for instance, give check here, and white will probably go, white will go here. He could go back and say, okay, I'm happy with the draw, but he would probably not. And when you take here, then white will simply give a check, and black will be mated due to his back rank. Can you see this line? This is a very nice line to try and calculate. So winning this one on e6 is not recommended. Okay. So instead, he decided, okay, I have to take, because at the moment I'm actually more in danger of being mated by white's check here than I am in check rating white. So take. Okay, and we see that, okay, white is clearly up on material if he has just one move, something like I don't know, h4 could be make sense or something. Anyway, something where he gets his pieces out, or if he just give a check or something, then he's of course winning. So black has to see here if he can do something. His problem here is something like that. This is not working. Here there might be better, but the simplest is just to do this and have a totally winning ending, because he will have to exchange the queen. So that's something you see instantly, that this is too slow. So you have to take. Okay, and it would be smart to calculate. So we see here check, king takes, and there will be a check, and king will go here, and there will be a check, and the king will go here. If it stays down here, it's clear that you have a draw. But then we also see that, oops, there is something here. What's going on? Can that be a problem? There's a check with the knight. The knight has been out of the game for a long time now. But if black was to take here, then he would give sort of a check there, forking the king and the queen. But okay, white will get a very active king, and he does have 4 pawns versus 1. and a very active king, and these out here are in general not very good for knight. So this looks promising for white, just pushing the pawns. It seems like black does not have counterplay with the knight. How it's going to attack the pawns? So okay, let's see the variation. He did take, and he played here check, and again, it doesn't matter too much. He went here, and here he took this one. So that was what we tried to calculate for before. So this is the trick. If there is a check, for instance here, black can go here. It's almost the same thing. You probably have like to exchange it, but it's kind of better for white to have his king further ahead. So okay, calculation says okay, yeah, I take. He takes. He gives check. King goes up. Knight takes. King probably goes more up, attacking the knight, trying to kick it back. If it goes to something like this square, then you can always go f3. You can also go king d5 and f4. Seems and just do something like this with the king. Seems like a very good idea. How's the knight gonna go in? It has to. If you want to attack here, it has to get to this square. If it wants to attack here, it's from either this, or this square. But often, if he's, for instance, approaching one of these squares, you can go something like f3 or a3 and avoid it. And it does seem very promising for white. I don't think he was sure it was winning, but I'm sure he knew that. And that's also something you're guided in your calculation, that if there are a lot of if you have a lot of pawns and a very active king, then usually you're better against a knight, because a knight is not very good in these positions. And the king is coming in here, and we see that actually when it turns out this is probably totally hopeless for black. The knight is simply no match for the king and the pawns, and he's just okay. He went that way. I thought, it makes sense. And here and again he went this way, just going straight for the pawn, and the knight is not very good at defending these things. And so here comes another knight, king here, just eating all the pawns. You could win a pawn here. I don't know how but if you take here something like this, and then this passer is really, really big problem for black. And that is a general rule. These pawns here on the edges are a big problem for knights, because they are so limited in their moving abilities. And here white is just winning the race, because we can try and calculate one move that could make and just do something and do something and so on, and it will probably queen very fast. Okay, he went here, check. And that also makes sense, because the knight is saying here cannot be attacked. But you also have more pawns, and if the knight moves, then notice this move is probably important. If you do something like this, then black might get some counterplay with this one. So just move it before you're ready, and here just pushing, and here you resigned. And here again we see that the h pawn is just gonna come. So something like this here, you can play whatever. You can play e5. You could also play h6, I guess. Take if something like this, and maybe e5 and something like this. And I think this is simply hopeless. There's no chance you're gonna survive here with black. The pawns are just gonna queen. So this was he resigned after I think h5, and a great game by Jonas. And I hope this gave you some sense. It's of course very complicated. Don't feel bad if it was too complicated. You probably learned a little bit about how to think about calculation, when to calculate, and so on. Even though, and we probably, if you go over this with the computer, you're probably going to see a lot of mistakes on my part, but that's part of the game. That's usually also what most grandmasters experience after they play the game. They realize that, oh man, Stockfish thinks I'm a total idiot, and The good thing is we're not playing against Stockfish. This was GM Talks. Thank you for watching.